Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 3 of The Dive.
Big number 3, and for big number 3, Azael, my favorite number. Guess who we have here? It's Meteos, my favorite pro jungler.
12.3 KDA.
12.7, and thank you. Glad to be here.
My mistake.
Now, Meteos, we had some updates with you this season. You signed with Optic. Now the Optic roster is 10-man, revolving everybody around. Is everyone on the bench or no one on the bench in a situation like this?
Well, I guess everyone's kind of on the bench. Yeah, it's been pretty interesting. It wasn't exactly what I was expecting coming into it, but I think it's a pretty decent system that we have going where both teams work pretty closely together, and so we're able to like learn from one another. And you know, if like something's not working out, we can try just like swapping a player or swapping multiple players and seeing like if something else works better.
Now, when people have pitched these ideas of 10-man, all competitive rosters before, one of the biggest things and one of the biggest selling points is always, oh yeah, and we can do secret internal scrims where we hide our own strategies and then we surprise people on stage. And the Optic squad that you guys have fielded for the first 2 weeks actually has picked up way more wins than people thought that they were going to do. Have you been doing, one-on-one strategies with the other squad, and how has it been going?
There's been a little bit of that, definitely. I think probably the biggest thing is just matchup practice. So, you know, if people want to see how a lane's going to go, it's like Alorum and Dokla can just do like 10 different 1v1s of the same matchup, trying the different sides. And so you get a pretty good feel for it. I think sometimes you can run into a trap, though. If like you only practice in-house and you try to hide stuff, because a big thing in League is like there's a lot of stuff you don't know that you don't know, right? And so if you're only practicing against one team, it's like your weaknesses won't be exposed in the way that they might on stage or against another opponent. So while there is some of that, I think typically teams don't go for too much like super secret strats, because if you haven't tested it enough and just seen how different opponents react to it and stuff, then like you probably aren't going to be confident enough to like whip it out on stage.
Yep. Just because a pick, like Alorum can beat Dokla pick, and maybe Dokla is playing in a certain way that someone else would play differently. And as you say, sometimes you can actually learn bad tendencies by only playing against the same people, because they may have a weakness that, another team doesn't, or they may have a strength that like this pick doesn't work against them, but it will work against everyone else, or vice versa.
It does sound so cool though, right?
It does. And I think it's useful in specific instances, right? Like, especially I think like as a specific counter pick, if it's not like your only practice and stuff like that, then okay, we practice a specific lane counter or whatever, like, kind of famously the Licorice Hecarim versus Aatrox thing, right?
Yeah,
like something
exactly.
like that. I
Or
think
the
makes
Echo
a lot
versus Victor.
Yeah,
I mean, he gets
exactly like that
he gets
one.
blamed for that one, but Fnatic was just better than them, right?
Yeah, I'm
like,
just playing.
yeah, but I do think it can work out,
And
but
that's something I've kind of been missing, the moment. I think the biggest one for me was Rocks Tigers, like the MF support, because it was such a big game, and they pull out this crazy one, and then that becomes such a big deal. I want to see more stuff like that. Like in the LCK right now, Griffin, like Lehens will play whatever he wants as support, support Elise and stuff, and even if people flame him, they are good enough and they have practiced enough that they want to try these different things. I want surprise moments in my league games.
It's so hard to justify support Elise with Guardian. Not a troll pick though. Like, I'm pretty sure if you can win with that, you could probably win with just about anything in that.
you should be
slot.
talking that up. You could be you have another option where you can slot in, get in for some support.
2 bench spots.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. Maybe not the best pick.
I mean, maybe not the Guardian Elise or whatever, but I do think part of the reason we don't always see as much like surprise picks and stuff is because people are fairly risk averse on stage. I think a lot of people, I know I've talked to you about this before, and sometimes people are very heavily affected by what the community thinks and what they say. It's like, if I play some basic meta stuff and I lose, okay, but if I play some Guardian Elise and I lose, you bet your ass you're gonna get flamed, right? Like,
there's actually another angle to that too, where usually when you're practicing scrims, it's like teams will pick fairly like meta picks all the time, and occasionally like you'll try out some new stuff, but other teams just won't want to practice versus you if you're constantly whipping out like troll picks, right? Like if we're just whipping out like Elise support or just really low tier stuff, the enemy will probably start by banning it because they're like, we're not learning anything from this practice. You know, a good team's going to pick Alistair here, not Elise.
Mm.
And so they just get like really skewed reads. And a lot of scrims is just practicing fundamentals, right? It's like map movement, communication, vision control, that sort of stuff. So when a game gets heavily skewed because someone wants to try this like off the wall pick, it kind of like hurts everyone involved. So I think that's a pretty big part of why we don't see it more too.
Yeah, it's honestly very similar to like a principle that we use on playtest team a lot, which is like when you're trying to test for a certain thing, you kind of have to like isolate a certain test point, right? So it's like in this example, you're trying to figure out, okay, does like Maokai top work instead of Sign if Sign is banned out or whatever, right? And then to actually figure out if that is a good pick or not, everything else around it has to be fairly standard, right? Because otherwise, how the hell do you know how good the Maokai is if your support Elise is 015? You know, like that's not a real test, right?
That used to always happen to me on C9. And I remember it was every time I wanted to try a pick, no one on the team could take the game seriously. Like, at one point I was like, I think Volibear, like, he seems like he does what a jungler needs to do. You know, he's like kind of tanky. He's got like some early game.
He's
Let's try
he's
it
a
out.
bear. He's at home in the
And
woods.
Every lane, there's like a solo kill at level 3, one
Like,
way or
this
another.
Volibear pick just isn't that good. I mean,
You know, are you sure we should have picked Volibear there? I'm just like,
you
we're not
died 3
playing.
times before I finished my first buff.
Well, there's actually been a lot of changes specifically to the jungle recently that teams are going to have to test out these experience changes that have come into the game. And LCS just started with 9.2, and there's been a lot of very vocal reaction from all junglers and even non-junglers like streamers and everything about those changes. Now, jungle experience is reduced the later the game goes. As they're respawning, they're not increasing by as much. What is like your holistic take on these changes? And have you like practiced some different theory crafting stuff with Dardoch specifically? Because you guys have 2 really good junglers on the same team.
Right. We definitely like we'll each have some of our own picks we want to try out against each other. And then
Volibear.
That one's hot.
keep it on the down low. But yeah, I mean, we definitely try out stuff, and I think Dardoch's like really good. So it's pretty cool being able to scrim against him because like there's some junglers where they'll just do like really huge blunders in their pathing or like not really punish you correctly for things you do. But I think Dardoch's super good. So we've definitely been able to learn from each other in that respect.
About the
XP
the
changes.
experience nerfs at all? Yeah, it basically is jungle ruined overreaction.
Yeah.
It's
Some people are
I don't know.
are
It's
really complaining a lot.
like
about it.
I definitely think that there's, you know, the vocal crowd where anytime your role gets nerfed whatsoever, they like to say it's ruined.
Yeah,
And I actually, honestly, I didn't notice the XP nerfs too much when I first started playing, but lately I've been feeling them a lot more. And it kind of feels like, you know, there's kind of this trade-off where, you know, if one guy's ganking a lot and like all your lanes are losing, you can kind of farm to, even though you're not pressuring as much, you'll stay like the same level as him. But right now it feels like you just kind of have to fight all the time because if their jungler's going around getting kills and you're farming, you'll just be behind.
by
And
like
so-
2 levels sometimes.
Exactly. And it'll just make this really weird dynamic where I feel like farming just isn't worth anything. So, you know, if you're forcing kills all the time and it's working out, great, you're getting ahead. But if it's not working out, then you're like extremely behind. So it feels a lot more snowballing now for
Yeah,
sure.
it definitely does to me, especially as the game goes on. If I'm doing really well and I have like 9 kills or something, then there's a tiny chance that I'm the highest level in the game. I'm probably just the same as the solo laners, or sometimes they even have a level over me. Whereas before, like if I was actually popping off, then not only would I have all this experience and gold from kills, but I was power clearing my camps so easily, and I felt like I was getting so much more from them. So I've definitely been a lot more scared of ganking solo laners, especially top laners that in solo queue all take ignite and they'll
Oh,
turn
yeah.
on the jungler
You
and
just
beat
die.
you.
Show up with, to try to gank through Renekton. He's
Yeah.
sitting at
the
100
level
Fury.
6 Night Riven.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just dead.
It's-
So it feels pretty bad, honestly. Like just because you kind of have to make a choice. It's like, okay, do I keep farming to not fall super behind, or do I like make this risk, go for the play, where maybe I can stay on par with the rest of the game, or if it fails, then I'm super behind.
Which is why, to me, it feels like you like right now. So there's the two different schools of thought, right? It's kind of like people are going full on like early game junglers still, like people, like Lee and Zin and maybe J4 and stuff like that, who can gank a lot and, as you say, fight for those kills and try to stay up in XP that way. And then there's kind of like the more like supportive role, like the Ivern or the Nunu or whatever. But it does feel like a lot of the kind of like scaling junglers are just eliminated because, while the XP changes are big, they don't actually make that big of a difference in the early stages, right? Like when we looked at the numbers, it takes, at least this is competitive stats, but it was about 20 seconds longer to get to level 6. And then it was like about a minute 20 or thereabouts to get to level 11. And then it gets like, significantly slower in the higher levels. So it's like that's where it really starts to affect you more. You still have more gold, but champions that are dependent on levels in particular are definitely hurt a lot more.
Yeah, because the way that the XP works is actually the same at level 1. So your first clear is going to be the exact same. Jungle monsters scale until level 7, and then after that, they don't scale anymore. And the maximum that they scale to now is a lot lower than it was, like, I don't know, what's 20% less experience, something like that? I don't know the exact numbers.
Yeah, it's
Real answer
significantly
is
less.
tax all your laners. Get that.
I mean, that's
XP.
kind of what you have to do, right? It's like you have to get kills or experience some kills, and then you push the wave with your laner. So I don't know if it's
Turret plates. That's what you gotta go for
Dragons,
now.
turret plates.
That's actually what this has like pushed me more in favor of. Because when turret plates first came out, I was very cautious and I would try and like grab maybe one plate and get out of there because I felt like it was a bait to get a bad recall for my laner, and then my top laner would be crying again, like come back immediately so I can get my wave back because he stayed too long trying to take plates. But now I'm like, these plates are like the most valuable thing for me to do. I don't even.
Plates are insane. One thing that's I find really big in games is if you can take Herald between like 10 minutes in the 14-minute mark.
Free money.
Herald will do true damage, so it'll always kill 2 plates. So what you want to do is like show up at a lane that has like 3 or 4 plates remaining. You take a couple plates and then summon the Herald because it gets additional armor and MR per plate that goes down, but the Herald hits it for true damage, so it'll always hit it for like 2 plates worth of damage, about 40% of its health, and then you can just get like an unreal amount of gold for yourself or like your boy. And
did you know the bonus for getting first turret now is actually less than a single plate? It's 150 gold bonus for getting your first turret bonus or whatever. So it's not even that big of a deal of like finishing off the first turret. It's that like you're saying, I'm mining as many plates as quickly as possible off of turrets. So I look for turrets that are level 5 or still have 5 plates on them to go try and mine the most.
I do kind of like the idea though that it's like more interesting to actually fight for a rift, to fight for dragons, to play for plates and not just like have a more kind of like farm incentivized style, because dragons too feel really good to take for me, whether I'm playing like no matter what lane I'm playing.
A dragon's insane.
I actually want to fight for dragons because the first one especially is so much stronger. So like pretty much the only one I honestly don't feel super incentivized to take in the early game is maybe like Mountain. Yeah. But like
Mountain's so good though.
It is, but I mean not immediate power, right? Like I'll want to grab it, but like if there's like an ocean that spawns first, if you can get that early, I just feel like I won every lane by like just taking the dragon.
Yeah, that's true.
Here's the thing too, though. Since not only is the buff more powerful, since it also gives 100 gold and experience, if there's any opportunity for me to sneak it, or if your bottom lane is winning, it doesn't even put you really behind like it used to. So even mountains, I'll still try and get it early if I feel like we're gonna have control for the next one that comes up too.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I see an early Cloud Drake, Ocean Drake, Infernal Drake, of course.
Super weird about Mountain Drake is after they did those changes to the first dragons, like it's 16% true damage. And so the difference between trying to kill Baron with or without a mountain is at an all-time high right now. It's pretty much like if your team has Mountain Dragon, like the other team can never leave you alone with Baron. 10 seconds and you kill it. But if you don't have Mountain,
and you can do it with 2 people really easily now too. That's been my biggest thing. In solo queue, nobody really pays attention. So if they see like a couple of your teammates in lane somewhere, then I'm like, all right, time to do Baron, guys. I just need one person with me, and you can go get it.
Especially if you're playing like a Nunu or something. I had a game last night where my Nunu with just Nunu and 80 carry took it on spawn at 20 minutes, and the Nunu's at 100% HP still when it dies. So I'm like,
I actually heard from Terry, like big on my team, that he was playing a game with a Lee Sin who had Warrior, Cleaver, Tabby.
Do you solo it?
He soloed it with 3 Mountain Dragons.
Okay, 3. Okay.
I mean, it's 3, but still soloing
Yeah.
Baron's insane.
yeah, that's pretty nice.
I don't know. I
Especially
feel
for
like
Lee Sin.
I feel like that's probably overtuned. I think Mountain probably is giving too much right now.
The thing
I mean,
with-
they're all so buff though.
Yeah.
A Cloud Drake makes you so fast.
Yeah, it does.
You remember old quintessences? Cloud Drake gives you 3% in combat move speed now, in addition to the nutty like out of combat move speed. 2 free quintessence runes.
Yeah,
This
it's
feels like
definitely good.
Yeah. I feel like we were talking about this the other day. I don't know how you feel about Cloud, but I feel like overall, people still really underestimate Cloud. I hear a lot of people saying like, well, you don't fight for Clouds. Like, that's not really worth it and whatnot, which seems funny
I
to me.
disagree.
I disagree too, because when, especially like when you think about pro play, I remember when Boots of Swiftness were like, every role was buying them when they were like 550 gold or whatever, when they were cheaper and stuff, for the amount of move speed. And it's like, people were emphasizing that so heavily because of the additional move speed that gave them like in combat, in fighting, and now ever since the Cloud Dragon buff, it's giving you in combat move speed as well. It's like this is a significant buff. It gives you out of combat move speed, and it gives you 3% in.
Yeah, well, the one thing I'll add about the boost of swiftness is there was another reason why people got it back then too, and it's because of the champions that were played.
Mhm.
That was when Frost Queen claim there was like 3 of them per
That's true,
game,
yeah.
and Trundle was really meta, like support. So if you didn't have boost of swiftness, you would just get caught out by a slow, and like you were
Mhm.
trapped. You couldn't get away. So that was a big reason for it. But I do agree that like Cloud's pretty good right now.
Yeah.
I think one reason, I mean, as a jungler, like it does so much damage. It does
Yeah,
just kills you if you try to solo it. Like it does probably like
it's because the attack speed is super fast and the dragon has the on hit thing.
yeah, it's percent current
Yeah.
health. So you just like have to recall pretty much if you
Yeah.
try soloing
It's
Cloud.
definitely rough.
So it feels pretty bad.
Um,
It's bad.
The other thing that we kind of wanted to touch on first, like with the state of the game, or at least I wanted to see, you don't have to give away a lot, but I was very curious of like how in scrims have been going recently here with like the beginning of the season, which would be your top 1 or 2 or even 3 like junglers that if you hear you're going in a scrim against them, you're worried. Like who would
Players or champions?
jungle players?
Oh, players?
Yeah, for the LCS teams, like who do you think who immediately comes to your mind as like, even if the team isn't that good, like just jungler?
Actually, like I think the hardest jungler for me to play against, he's not LCS, but it's Blabber. Like
Oh,
I don't know why, but this guy, like I don't know if it's just how he plays lining up with how I play, but like I can never like read this guy. He's
Mhm.
always doing something that I don't expect that's good, right? So it's like usually when I'm playing against junglers, there's a couple things I think about. Like there's the prediction for me of like what he's doing at a given time, right?
Mhm.
It's like he's probably doing this, he's probably doing that. Some of the weaker junglers, they surprise me by doing bad stuff. But then the really good junglers, they surprise me by doing good stuff.
Yeah. How do you know what I'm doing if I don't know what I'm doing?
By the way, as soon as you started talking about that, I remember. So I played against Meteos and you were Rek'Sai at the beginning of the season. He probably remembers this
Yeah, I
because I
remember.
messaged him afterwards. So he kills my mid lane, he kills my top lane, and then he also killed my bottom lane in the first like 5 minutes on Rek'Sai. And so of course my whole team, everyone is like flaming the shit out of me. They're like, "What the fuck are you doing? You know, LCS caster, you're fucking garbage, blah blah blah." And I'm like, "It's a pro jungler."
LCS
What?
caster versus LCS player.
And he's on Rek'Sai, and I don't know what I was playing. I was playing some like
You were playing
Ivern
I
or
think you were
Nunu.
Ivern.
I was-
Yeah, you were Ivern.
and I was like, What do you want me to do?"
Yeah.
But anyways, that's
mean,
that's me. The
The thing
jungler
is,
makes
that
me
just
mistake.
happens sometimes. Is jungle like if all your lanes decide to give up a kill to their jungler, it's like, what do you want me to do? Like now everyone's behind, dude. It's not like I'm ahead because you gave that dude first blood.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, nice, man. You soaked up 5 seconds of his time. Only gave him a kill in 2 waves. Like, nice, man.
Yeah.
That's so good for me.
So anyways, you were explaining about Blabber. Like, why is Blabber the guy
I don't know, he
that
just-
could read you?
I don't know. He's just is always doing stuff that catches me off guard. Like, I think he's really, really good.
I mean, he was. I honestly have been surprised that we haven't seen him at all. Not that Cloud9's doing poorly; they're doing, obviously pretty fine. I think they're 2-2. But like, he was so good in summer, and I feel like everyone just forgot about Blabber during Worlds because he didn't do very well in playing and whatnot. And then they went full time with Svenskeren, and then they got semis. So then he just got like deleted out of everyone's brain. It almost felt like, because I heard no one talking about him. Some people were talking about like in the community about, okay, well maybe we'll see Golden Glue subbing in. No one's even mentioning Blabber anymore, even though he was popping off at LCS Summer. So I
Yeah,
definitely
I do.
Part of that was the fact that a lot of their success was with like
Kindred.
Zillion Kindred
Yep,
combo,
Zillion
right?
Kindred.
And I think maybe some people felt that he wasn't as strong on other picks.
Mhm.
Like, he's obviously a very good Kindred, and he played it extremely aggressively. But I think at Worlds he was having some trouble, right? Like that
Yeah.
aggression was
So
causing some
the thing that came
issues.
to my
He was
mind
definitely
when you
making a lot of
started talking
mistakes
to
at
me,
Worlds.
I think the image or the game that he left people with was that Jarvan game,
Oh yeah, that
which was
tragic.
the last game that he got to play as a starter. He's playing Jarvan like they don't have a very good early game, and then there's something in the mid game where he EQs into a blind
I
bush,
remember that.
into
Yeah.
the blind bush in mid lane. And like the whole enemy team is there, and viewers have full vision, so everyone's like, "What the hell is this guy doing? He's going jumping in on Jarvan." And he, it's unfortunate. It was like a very risky play because they don't have
Yeah.
vision there, but.
He did make a lot of mistakes, but
yeah.
he was also, it was like his first split. He's obviously very young. I still think the guy has a bright future and kind of.
Oh yeah, I
confirmed
mean
by
he's
what
an
you're
absolute
saying.
monster in solo queue too.
That's
like,
cool.
He's one of those players that just will always be top challenger, and he doesn't even do it as far as I know in like super cheesy ways. Like there's some ways you can kind of like pad your rank by like abusing certain champions or cheeses or duo that kind of thing. But I don't know. Like I just have a lot of respect for the dude. I think he's really good.
That's cool.
Definitely.
Do you want to drop a name on the how did he phrase it? The bad junglers that make unexpected mistakes or something like that? Or
I
Plead
mean,
the
I don't want to.
fifth,
you don't have to flame anybody. I just wondered if you wanted to drop, like, there was a funny
If you
occurrence
need
that
a name,
happened.
right?
Well, I mean, I don't want
I
to put
already
anyone
volunteered.
on blast. I'll say like the person I find myself most surprised against, for better or worse, is Rush. Like, I don't think that's a surprise to anybody though. Like that dude's got a pretty creative play style.
That's on
like,
brand for Rush. That's on brand.
Yeah, like I mean, I love Rush. He's good for sure. But I mean, like some games, I'm just like, the way I explain it to someone is like when I'm playing against most LCS standard junglers, it'll be like, okay, 90% chance he's here, like his camps are respawning, he'll be doing this kind of pathing, maybe 10% chance he's doing some random stuff. With Rush, I'm just like, I don't even feel comfortable being like, yeah, his camp's coming up, he's gonna be here. It's just like
Clears topside,
He's somewhere,
spaces,
guys.
walks back topside.
yeah, I mean, he's good. He finds a lot of windows that like other people wouldn't find, but sometimes I'm just like, why is he here kind of thing.
Yeah, he's mechanically really good too. Let's talk a bit about NALCS. Has been a bit of a crazy split so far. There is a clear number 1, TL 4-0. There's a clear number 10, 0-4 for Golden Guardians.
The two perfect records.
Yeah, a bit unlucky for Golden Guardians to be on that end of it. And then we have FlyQuest at second, and we have like 6 teams or something you said in third, right?
Yeah, I
There's a
think it
whole
was-
bunch of teams at 2 and 2.
Yep.
So, like TL is kind of where everyone expected, but what have been like the big surprises for you, right? As far as like standouts, maybe people doing a lot better than you expected or a lot worse.
Well, I mean, I think the biggest surprise for most people is probably 100 Thieves starting at 1 and 3.
Yeah.
Everyone's expecting them to do really well because, they made it to Worlds.
2-time world champion got added.
Yeah, they added Bang, they added Huhi, and he's got synergy with Afromu. So I think there were some pretty high.
Sorry. As soon as you started talking about Hui, I just remember last week the Rise game, and he wanted to get to the point in the game where he could go to Afromu maybe and like work with that
Yeah.
synergy, but
His TP didn't quite
his
make
TP
it.
didn't get him there. Oh, he got the
I mean,
Aatrox in mid lane.
It happens. There's some
Unlucky
rough games, some rough plays, but I mean, I think everyone expected them. Like,
Yeah.
in almost all the predictions, you're expecting top 4 for sure.
Yeah.
And it's not to say they can't get there, but definitely not the start they were expecting because their one win came off of like someday working his magic, getting like
Kali.
the 3v5 Baron steal.
It wasn't even a clean win, and their 3 losses. The thing that was most damning for me was not even that they were 1 and 3, because it's like, okay, the 3 teams they lost to were arguably the 3 best teams in the league, right? Or at least like teams that were predicted up there.
Yeah.
But they didn't just lose; they got blasted, right? It wasn't like really hotly contested games where okay, they just barely got out team fought, or maybe one lane didn't go so well. It was like they were getting slammed in all 3 of those games. It didn't feel like they really had a chance. And then the Golden Guardians game was like the 2 teams with no wins, and that was like a bloodbath. And 100 Thieves was actually way ahead, and they almost threw that game with a couple bad fights. So it was like, oh God, right? You know, that like you can see Afram got interviewed after that, and he seems super unhappy even
Of
after the
course.
win, right? Like,
And I mean, I know some people gave him some flack for that. I can kind of understand though as a player.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I
I
get it
I would
completely. I
I
just
know
mean
for
that's like
me,
their mindset, right?
like my happiness or like unhappiness after a game, it's rarely from the result itself. It's more like how we played during the game. Because like if we have a super sloppy win, I'm not going to be that happy about it. Because a lot of the time it's just like, okay, we didn't play well, but the other team played worse,
Hmm.
right? But if like we play super clean, but we lose, like you're playing against a team that's just like really on top of it. Maybe they had a little better draft. They just like some plays just didn't go our way.
Mhm.
Then I'm not that upset about it. So I feel like he's probably feeling that kind of way. Like
Yeah, he has high
he wasn't
expectations for
happy
their
with
team, obviously.
yeah, he wasn't happy with the level of play in the game, so he probably just like wasn't in a great mood.
I
Yeah.
will say that, you're referring to the three teams that they lost to. Those are the only three teams that I put above them in
Mhm.
my preseason power rankings. So I think that's actually a good, saving grace here, even though, yes,
Yeah.
it's a really rough early week for 100 Thieves. They have time to reset. Now it's up to, coaching staff. I feel like they still they have good players that they can still perform to that sort of level, and they're not necessarily behind kind of the curve that like I predict
Yeah.
them to start out on.
Totally.
Um,
The record isn't as surprising as the way in which they lost again,
Yeah.
right?
Right. I also think that there's a decent amount to be said that it's only 2 weeks into the season because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's very easy to look at numbers and be like, oh, that team's 4-0, like clearly better than 2-2. And I mean, like I will say
Twice
Liquid
as many wins, even.
Liquid looks in a tier of their own. Like
Yeah.
I'm not going to take that away from them. Liquid is doing really well, but at the same time, with a lot of the other teams in the standings, you have to look at it's like who have they played so far, right? It's like like 100 Thieves, they've played against probably the top teams.
Mhm.
So the rest of the round robin, they're going to have probably some easier opponents.
Yeah.
And then some teams, they've stolen wins off of maybe an easier schedule. So and there's also not to mention the meta, right? It's like very early season people haven't totally figured out what the best champions are. There's some scrim god champions that like when you're playing them in scrims and you're playing super aggro and you're just getting massive lane advantages, that might not happen on stage. Maybe instead of the other team feeling
That's like Victor to me, dude. Victor
That's
has been
Victor
looking
for sure.
so bad, and every game it comes out, I feel like it's
It's
looking
a
so
counter, all right, to the team that
Yeah.
picks it.
it's the Victor, it's the Namis, it's the champions that are like very lane dominant, and in scrims, the person playing against is just like, I don't want to deal with losing lane for 30
Yeah.
minutes straight. I'm gonna just go for the all in.
I think that this is a super
It's like Jace all over again.
super
Yeah.
strong point, especially right now where laning phase is so important because you can get so much money out of laning phase with the way that the game is right now that
Mhm.
even more than ever, like if you have the counter pick that the other team did not scrim about or know about or anything, and their whole draft was up to this, it's a best of one game. You get hit with this champion select that's super rough, and you get slammed on stage. There's only been a couple of games, and immediately everyone's like, this team is garbage,
Mhm.
wipe them from your memory. Like Golden Guardians are going to be 10th place back to back again because they started 04. Like people are going to jump to those conclusions, and a lot of it too. I guess if we use this Golden Guardians example, by the way, which is going to like an interesting topic as well. I don't know if you think how they're doing is going to be, project to the future, but we were talking about this a bit before. I think it might have been Dash I was just talking about, and he was like, this is so early in the season. Any team, like if it was a brand new team that started out 04 like that, we would give them, some leeway and be like, oh, it's the beginning of the season. There's so many factors that are going on. But because they have this history of the back-to-back 10th places in both leagues, everyone has already damned them to 10th again, and they're like the worst team. Have you scrimmed against them? What do you about
I
that
mean, we've
spot?
practiced against Golden Guardians before, and I think they're definitely a team that looked better in scrims than they've been performing on stage. Like, by no means were they kind of like easy opponents or something like that. Like, it seems like all the player on the team like can create advantages for themselves. They work together fairly well. Like, they didn't seem as if they were on a lower tier than any other team we practiced against. So it could just be an unlucky start, but sometimes that can sort of like your earlier results can get in people's heads, right?
Yeah.
It's like
The mental
because
side.
if you're super result focused in league, then it's really easy to fall into certain like logical traps, right? It's like you start thinking in binary ways. It's like, say that I'm a jungler and it's like I really want to play this champion and my team forced me to play another champion and then we lose on it. I'm just like, if I just played the champion I wanted to, we would have won for sure. But it doesn't really work that way, but it can like obviously losing feels really bad. So sometimes people can like get trapped in that kind of
Mhm.
line of thinking and it
Yeah.
can kind of like actually hurt you as opposed to just like trying to see things as objectively as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think another reason that there were such high expectations was not even just like because of what their previous history of getting 10th back to back and blah blah blah. People thought they would start better, but it's also like look at the players who joined the team, right? Like we saw these guys joining the team like Hanser. It was basically a year removed, but he had won a number of championships. Ole joins, he's back to back championships as well as back to back worlds. Hanser had been at worlds a number of times. Like a lot of these guys have like very positive history kind of attached with them. So people were expecting them, like on paper, it's supposed to be a much better team. And for Golden Guardians, it is unfortunate because when you talk about, okay, strength of schedule and like some of these teams maybe, picked up some wins off weaker teams and stuff, like their easy week was supposed to be week 1, right? Like that where they went 0-2. And then now in their coming next 3 games, they're 0-4. They have to play TSM, TL, and Optic in their next 3 games, right? Like that could be a 0-7 start. And I think that like mentally, as you're talking about, like that was something that I was talking about with Dash as well. It's just that it's like even if a team does have the ability to improve and like has the skill to be a playoff team, if you just go mental boom, if you don't have someone like managing that and really trying to like help the players through that time, I think it can be extremely difficult. And like when I was casting the last Golden Guardians game where they lost against 100 Thieves, the way in which they lost, where it was like the 5v3 at Baron for Golden Guardians, they're on the Baron and like definitely goes out of the pit and isn't hitting the Baron, and Contract has to smite because he's dying to someday. He has to smite for health, or he would have just been dead before the Baron died anyway. And then they lose that and they lose the game off that. Like the way in which they lost that to me was just like I'm watching that and I'm just thinking, oh God, like season over. Like it's just the worst, most like heartbreaking way to lose, when you're
Yeah.
already 0-3 and then it's like, okay, now we have to play 3 really hard teams in our next 3 games. There's one team has ever even made playoffs when they start 0-4, and they're like reasonably could be 0-7 or 1-6.
I mean, the mental side of pro league is a very, very important side of it.
Mhm.
And like you're saying, since they started out the week with the easier schedule 0-4 and heading into a harder schedule, it's very likely that they start out like the entire first round robin, with mostly losses here, and they're on that same track. Like that can be so difficult to overcome as far as team atmosphere and trying to keep your head clear for practicing new strategies and trying to actually focus on improvement rather than dwelling on community reactions and stuff. And you're definitely one that has experienced so many ups and downs of involving the community. Like it feels like such a tight line to have to walk and balance.
It's super hard, and I think one thing that can happen too with teams is like the trust between players. Like if that gets broken at some point due to like poor results or people not seeing eye to eye, that can be very hard for a team to move forward, right? Because if you're trying to deal with like internal conflicts between the team, then you're not even functioning as like a unit at that point. Like if you're playing against a team that's all working together and cooperating well, then it can be really hard. And I feel like you can kind of see it sometimes in teams like when they slump. Like when they're just not playing together, everyone starts playing a little bit more greedy. No one wants to
Yeah.
sacrifice for the rest of their team.
Everyone picks a
like,
lane
I have
dominant
to carry.
champion. There's like
You're not going to do it.
Yeah,
so I
and
gotta
then
carry,
usually
right?
what ends up happening is those players will just like, they start pushing the line because they feel like they have to take it upon themselves to make advantages.
Gotta get the solo
And then it's
kill.
like, okay, I don't know where their jungler is, but I want to go for this wave, and
Mm-hmm.
oops, I'm dead. And then things can just snowball completely out of control. And that's not to say that's going to happen to Golden Guardians, but it's something that I've seen happen time and time to like all kinds of different teams. But I think on the same side, you're talking about the mentality of things, and because they're going into a harder schedule, sometimes you can rally, right?
Yeah.
Like they
if you
haven't
win one, then that's
yeah,
hype.
exactly. And sometimes the upper teams, like when I've been on like the really successful teams, when you go up against an opponent that like you just completely underestimate, you can just get really sloppy, like not prepare your draft correctly, do some troll stuff in game, and just end up losing.
Yeah.
And taking a win off a top team when you're struggling can be like a huge morale boost for the team and can kind of like get things up and running again. So I don't think Golden Guardians is doomed by any means, but it's a pretty rough start.
Yeah.
For sure.
But on the positive side of things, FlyQuest, the team that at least I didn't have nearly as high expectations for. I think a lot of people had them near the lower end of the standings. And they've been, like a really pleasant surprise, right? They're sitting at 3-1. They actually have
Never doubted them.
You put them at like 7th. They have the battle for first place actually this Saturday,
6,
right?
actually.
Against 6. Well, we're gonna have to check tapes on that one.
You put them 10th.
Okay. They on Saturday they're going up against Liquid, right? And that's not a match that it's on the same day as TSM Cloud9. And so I think everyone like on the schedule was looking, okay, TSM Cloud9, that's gonna be like the hype match that day.
Yeah.
The first place match is Liquid FlyQuest, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really cool. Especially like if FlyQuest were able to take down Liquid, that makes the league, I think, feel a lot more wide open. But I've been very impressed with a lot of their players. But Pobelter has really been looking good, and it's kind of cool to see him playing more comfortably and feeling like he has more room to kind of do his own thing and create his own advantages. And he's been looking good doing it.
I think their match against Liquid is going to be a pretty indicative match of how the rest of their season is going to look, because even though they have, a slightly better record than the rest of the league, it's one of those things where I feel like
they had an easy schedule.
It's not just like easy schedule, but it's not like they were super commanding victories and they're just outperforming everyone. I still think they're fairly close to the rest of the teams, even though like 3-1 looks so much better than 2-2, right? It's like 75% win rate versus 50. But
dude, he's just bragging
with all
over
these
here.
numbers.
He's just constantly
Mr.
bragging.
Show off.
Look, I can do math. Oh, look at me.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. But I think that Liquid's really going to test them, because even in some of their wins, like they've been having some kind of like slow early games, right?
Yeah.
Against Optic, JJ was giving some charity in the bot lane. Against TSM, it looked like Pobelter was kind of struggling in lane against Bjergsen and like going down quite a bit of farm.
Yeah.
And so I think that I'm not totally sold on them being like the definitive number 2.
Oh, of course not. Yeah.
Like they're doing well for sure, but I think that their match against Liquid is really gonna be a hard one for them. But if they can win, then I think that they make a really good case for themselves.
I like what you were talking about earlier, where like if a team takes down the team that's getting all the praise at the time, then it's such a big like energizing moment for anyone. And I'm already starting to feel like Team Liquid, since they won back-to-back splits and they signed all these superstars, right? They're being built up to be like the god team. And so whoever ends up, giving them their first loss is going to be so happy. So if FlyQuest do it, not only are they already well positioned in the standings, but I feel like that is just such a huge boost for whoever can take down Liquid the first time.
Yeah, totally. And for me, it's less about me thinking they're the second best team in the league and more just thinking I thought this team was going to be one of the bottom teams in the league.
Actually,
so,
the bottom team.
Yeah, but I did put them last. But I mean, it's one of those things where it's there's like a grouping of teams that I thought was going to be around the bottom spots, right? And that was definitely one of them for me. So even just seeing this start makes me think that they could compete for a playoff spot, right? Which is already, I think, above what a lot of people had as far as expectations for them. So I think, that is exciting to see. And it feels like a lot of the league is more wide open. As I mean, CLG, another team that had a much better second week, right? Stixay had an interview where he said he thought they were for sure the worst team in the league in week 1 and that they actually just improved a lot into week 2. So it'll be interesting to see like how some of these teams carry their success forward, because like week 2 for CLG, it was a lot better, but I also felt like they kind of won off draft a fair bit in both their games. If like both the games were the Scion games, both the games were their opponent picking no engage and the game going late. Like they were down 7K against FlyQuest, and FlyQuest had no engage and never was able to close out the game. They won late with this like stone plate Scion who had 12K HP when he pressed stone plate. Thanks to his W.
Yeah, and they did have scaling in their games.
They played better,
right?
But don't get me wrong. But I did think that it wasn't just like everything's fixed. It felt like the other teams kind of trolled the drafts a bit too.
Well, I feel like getting better and like an incremental step is what you got to have for this squad.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, but I heard like before LCS started or whatever, I kept on hearing all these rumors from scrims and stuff that CLG was the floor. Like they were getting just wrecked. They didn't have their strategic coach even locked down yet. And Irene, that's his name, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's Irene or Irian.
Or Irian.
I think it's Irene, but
Irene?
I'm not
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, I think so. But anyways, he's been like they've been so positive about him since they've brought him on. And one thing he did was also like make it the more standard roster, because I think they were just completely switching everyone every game before and like having a hard time building up what they actually want to focus on, which kind of makes sense a lot too. So if you're starting at the bottom, if you're the floor and you finally
They agreed. He said they were hard 10 first week.
You finally got all your pieces together. Now like their coaching is finally, able to put together. I think like that's a super positive thing for them. And talking about reactions, they were so goddamn happy after their win
off against Cloud9.
I felt like that was
was
the party.
big for them.
I like wanted to go like to the CLG after party.
You start hugging them.
Yeah, let's like they were.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a big surprise week 2 for CLG. Like, I think a lot of people were expecting them to be like near the bottom. So whether or not it was like them turning things around or maybe their opponents not respecting them enough,
Or a bit of both, right? Like
Yeah,
it
it
can
could definitely be
totally be
both.
both. Like they can improve, and their team's opponents didn't play the best games.
yeah, and I think it's really like the hardest trap to avoid in League when you're looking at like how good a team is or certain players. It's like it's so easy to just look at their results, right? It's like, oh, you won a game, you're good. You lost a game, you're not good.
You had a 14 KDA, best jungler.
12.7.
12.7. Damn it.
Maybe it was 14 at some point.
Yeah, at some point, but that's not the meme.
That's true.
We gotta stick to
not.
the canon meme.
And you are a good jungler. So
Speaking
Point-
of that,
I like to believe
this is
so.
a tangent. Do you like the Meteos ego Twitter? Because I find it hilarious.
I think it's
but
really
I could
funny.
also see how it would not be hilarious.
No, actually, honestly, when I first saw it, I didn't like it. Like,
Yeah.
when it first came about,
Yeah.
I was like, this is just someone like making fun of me.
Yeah.
And like I remember, I think I like blocked him on Twitter and stuff.
Okay.
And then like everyone kept saying like it was the funniest thing ever, and I think I was just like taking it too personally.
Yeah.
But eventually, I just like, realized it wasn't really.
It's not making
something to take-
fun of you. It's making fun of like what you could be. Almost.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
so like since then, like I thought it was really funny, and I actually don't know who runs it, and I don't
Still?
wanna know. I don't want to know.
okay.
I really
Yeah.
don't want to know. I think it's a lot funnier to just picture me saying it.
Yeah, I think so,
So,
too.
I'm impressed-
That's why I think it's so funny, because I know you and you're not like that. So it's like I think it's hilarious to
I only
picture
say that
you
in my
being
head.
like that. But if you were like that, I could definitely see it like hitting home a little bit too close.
It's the things that he thinks, but he just won't say. Yeah.
Exactly.
But I'm actually so impressed that it's still going. It's been going for so long. So it's definitely someone who is super invested in the scene.
Yeah.
Like
They have some good memes.
when it first started, people were theorizing just all these random like comedians and stuff too, and I was like, I don't think so. And now I'm definitely sure that it's someone way more invested in the scene.
It's you.
And they're really smart, and good looking,
Yeah.
and rich, and the best at everything they do. So,
Okay, well it's not even now.
Uh,
We've seen. We already heard the jungle story.
well, shit.
I don't know if you guys have been playing my solo queue, but 9.3
You do know.
is coming out.
You've seen me on, bro.
That's true. You've been playing. 9.3 is coming out. New patch. There's a number of changes. Most notably, I would say the marksman items getting changed again, as well as kind of like a slew of different nerfs. Anything big that really is standing out from this patch for you guys?
Well, I think this was the patch where they're hard nerfing Akali and Aatrox both, and I think it's a step in the right direction, because going back a little bit to competitive, like one of the things that I think is super strange right now is just like how many super overpowered champions there are, where it's like something like Akali, where maybe she has a 45% win rate in solo queue, but if you look at what this champion can do, like what she has access to, like granted it takes a lot of practice to get to the level where you can execute it correctly all the time, but like you just can't do anything against her if she's playing correctly. So that kind of thing's pretty lame, I think, when you're drafting, because it's like, okay, like what super insanely overpowered champion do we want to play against this time? Like which ones do we want to take? And honestly, it's been like all the new champions, right? It's like Aatrox, Akali, Urgot, all these things. So I'm happy to see some of them get nerfed, especially the ones where I think they lead to sort of like more stale game states, because a big thing that Riot's been trying to do lately with their patches is make like they reduce the amount of vision, so they want like more jungle ganks to happen, that kind of thing. But when you're playing against like Urgot, Akali, Lissandra, like you can't gank those champions. You can show up against an Urgot, him having no idea you're there, and he just walks away. He's so tanky.
Yeah.
So I definitely like seeing those champs get nerfed. I think that once they're a little bit more in line with other stuff, we'll be able to see like more champions come out.
Yeah, and they also added on Cassiopeia and Aurelia to that.
Exactly.
It was all of these champions that are like first pick, first
Urgot didn't
ban.
get nerfed though. That's the thing that makes me sad.
Yeah,
Because he's going to be 100% presence. He didn't get nerfed in this patch.
Yeah.
he got like that slight touch,
And
on
he's so boring.
9.2.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Urgot.
Yeah. Urgot's the worst for me because the other ones are OP, but at least they can be more interesting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Now you got less other things you have to ban.
I'm jungling.
That's true. Yeah,
I'm jungling against Urgot, and like this guy does way more damage than me at all points in time. He's way tankier. He has way more playmaking ability.
Into fucking
Yeah,
meat
it's
so
just
he
like,
can fear everybody.
where's my jungle champ that does all of this, right? It's like
Urgot jungle.
Yeah, I don't know if I have the money for that one. I might be low level the whole game. Right? Doesn't like me getting experience.
That's true. That's true.
We're worried junglers were having too much fun, so
Yeah.
no more.
It seems weird to me because the things that people, and now we're just going to talk about balance changes, which are Jat's fault. So you can blame him for ruining our jungle.
He was one of us.
He was one of us, and then he went and ruined everything. But the thing to me where they're like, so you kind of touched on it where you're like, oh, Riot wants junglers to gank more, but the complaints that everyone on both teams always has the most of is getting ganked. Like that's what makes people hate junglers. Like all laners hate junglers because they hate getting ganked, and they get ganked by the enemy jungler. They're flaming their jungle immediately. This guy ganked me. What are you doing? While your bottom lane, like, I just got a double kill. There's a whole map here, and you're a part of it.
Oh yeah, it's a huge thing, and one, I think it's definitely a good point because with a lot of the way Riot changes the game, like it's pretty clear with the way that's been going. Like they don't want junglers influencing lanes in such an insane way, right? And so they're like, okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna make it so junglers can't clear their jungle. Like we want them to just get so low health farming that they won't have time to gank. But what actually happens is you're just like, okay, so you're saying I get low HP farming, right? Like, yep. Okay, I won't farm. Like I will take red buff and I'm gonna gank. And you get stuff like Camille, Xin Zhao. And then previously what kept that playstyle from being so oppressive is the fact that like if I take red and go for a level 2 gank and the other guy does 3 camps, he's level 3.
Yeah.
And now he's contesting me on whatever camp I go to next with a level advantage. But now it's like you either need to do Krugs to get level 3, which takes a while and is super out of the way, or you're still level 2 as well. So you don't really punish it as well. So I think a lot of the changes that have been, well-intentioned haven't really hit the mark, and it's left the game in like a super strange state.
Yeah. For me, it always was weird because, like you're saying, the counter to this that was always a really interesting balance to jungling, and why, I wanted to be a jungler from the very beginning because there were so many options and there are so many different valuable things that you could do. The value in the jungle itself for farming should be decently high so that I can punish this Jarvan level 2 red buff cheese ganker for spending his time. Yes, if he gets the gank, that's well played by him and you get a reward. But if he fails it, then I get to punish him. I'm pathing over here to steal stuff from him, or I'm trying to organize my route in a way that all gain value from seeing him and like using this information. And there's a tug and pull. But if you're doing things, and this is just random theory crafting, I'm not a designer or whatever, but if you're doing things like lowering all the value in the jungle, then you're lowering the possible counters that I have to that strategy, and you're also adding this scuttle crab thing into the jungle that heals people as well as being the biggest source of golden experience. So if the Jarvan went for that gank and my mid laner like outplayed it, he flashed, he dealt a lot of damage back to him, that guy goes and takes the scuttle crab and he's back to full health or something now. Plus he's got the golden experience, and not only does it doesn't fight back, it gives you these big rewards. It also heals you full, it gives you your mana back and everything. That to me was like, okay, so they are making all these changes, like you're saying, to push people to these early ganking junglers, level 2, get out there, start fighting people, and they're taking away a lot of the back end, theory crafting around your jungle path and all these kind of mind games.
Yeah,
like the
I definitely agree with that for sure. One thing that's kind of weird too is I noticed that when they changed the machete and talisman to the current form, they took away the attack speed from machete. They made it all on hit damage, and it's just kind of like it streamlined a lot of the paths you can take on junglers. Where it's like, if I'm a machete champion, I kill my buffs really fast. I kill crabs really fast. I can't do raptors for the most part, and Krugs will kill me. So it's like I just think that's kind of weird constraints to put on the jungle. Whereas, like, if I'm playing Zac, it's going to take me 5 years to kill a red buff if I'm starting Talisman. And so I wish that junglers had like a more similar clear speed, I guess.
It did. The jungle items is another super interesting point because
you can tell there's two junglers here. We're not even talking about the patch notes.
And we're not
it's
involving our top laner. Just stay up there, dude. I'm trying to get my jungle route down. But so the other thing that they did with the talisman change, they basically removed mana constraints for junglers. So
I feel like Scuttle is really egregious with that.
Yeah,
like I feel like Scuttle is the biggest problem out of all this stuff. Personally, just like I play a lot of Phil.
Yeah, you get to interact with the Scuttle crab, so I'm gonna.
Yeah, I mean Scuttle. Well, I mean I play Phil, so I do play jungle too. But it's like Scuttle always felt weird to me because, like, for example, I liked playing Fiddlesticks, right? And when Scuttle got introduced, I'm like, well, I probably can never play this champion again. Like, yes, you can. Yes, it can work. But I mean, just how bad that champion is at taking Scuttle. Yeah. I don't know if you guys ever played Fiddlesticks, but it's like you fear it to get the resistances off, and then it's like, I'm supposed to sit here and drain life it while it runs away from me.
Meteos
and then I auto it for like
professional
40.
Fiddlesticks game. One of the very few professional Fiddlesticks.
I've won a game with Fiddlesticks, even more rare.
Yeah, so I mean, things like that felt weird to me, where there was like certain champions that I liked playing in jungle that I used to like playing Kale jungle. Not saying it would ever have worked in pro, but it was something that I just enjoyed playing in solo queue, right? And it's like, okay, well, how the hell does Kale ever kill this thing? I have no CC to remove the resistances from Scuttle. So it's like, okay, Kale's gone. Oh, Fiddle's not going to work. Okay, there's like a number of champions that I just immediately felt like, how am I ever supposed to get this thing that it's like, okay, you're playing a Xin Zhao, so you're already earlier, stronger than me. You're going to gank better than me. The way I'm supposed to get gold and mana back to keep farming is by doing the Scuttle, but I also can't kill that.
You know what? I talked to Darok about this a few weeks ago, and I was thinking, like, what if the way you broke the Scuttle Crab's armor and Mar, it wasn't CCing it, but the only way you can do it is smiting it. So if you want to kill Scuttle fast, you smite it early, and then you can kill it.
But you
and
can't
then it
it
kind of bridges the gaps between the Graves, who can effortlessly break the armor on this Scuttle and kill it 10 times faster than champs with no CC, who have to like actually invest their long cooldown CCs just to break the armor and Mar. So like, that's one of those constraints. I think it's a really good point to bring up because to me, it doesn't make sense. It's like, why is this something that affects which jungle champions are playable? Like, it doesn't seem like it should be that big of a deal to the point where it's like, okay, I'm just totally like putting myself at a disadvantage and my team because I want to play my favorite champion.
Yeah, like if you remove all these constraints, like again the talisman like example with mana, that's something that like, yes, it makes your jungling like take effort and thought into how I'm going to balance. Okay, I have what abilities am I going to use? What camps can I clear? It also puts that constraint on your opponent jungler, which made the cool game of like, I just saw him, with half mana or whatever, and previously like you didn't get all this back, and he's playing this champion or whatever. So I can kind of like start to build my thesis on like what the enemy jungler is doing, and so then you incorporate that into your overall game plan, which is something that I really enjoyed with it. But like they just boosted the mana regen to insane levels and made it regen in the river also.
I mean, I like that.
I mean, it does feel nice to like have all that power, right? But I kind of like having some, and maybe that's like, I'm not saying it's a bad change or you revert or anything, but some sort of constraint so that I'm planning around something and I can plan around something that the enemy is doing. Seems like that was kind of the more chess games type of feel that jungling used to have, I think.
Yeah. One thing too that while we're on the topic,
We should talk a bit about the marksman stuff because that's actually what's happening in the patch, and people are going to be watching the patch section and they're just like, "What are these monkeys?"
But I don't
That's
play
cool, but I
marksman.
gotta hear what my friend has to say over here.
Why do laners kill jungle camps faster than junglers at all points in time, except for the first clear? That's something that's bothered me for a while. Like, I'm in a competitive game, and look at junglers nowadays. It's like you get warrior because you have to play an early game jungler, and you get GA while the time everyone else has 4 items. Yeah, I want my jungle back.
Preaching to the choir.
All right, we can move on.
All right, let's talk about
hold on,
some
my
marksman
last
items.
example. When the level 4
These guys are trolling.
level 4 Renekton comes down from top lane and wants to take Scuttle Crab, I'm like, yes, sir, that's your Scuttle Crab, sir. Like, he's got a rage bar or something. He has Ignite. So I kind of like your smite idea. But we should move along to the item changes. You want to talk about the marksman one?
Sure. I mean, all the marksman items got redone, right? That is the big change. That is what most people are going to be thinking about with this patch. The general TLDR of what they're trying to do, the 3 main goals they had: crit users excited about their core build again. Crit builds are generally more satisfying in normal play without becoming problematic in pro. And crit users can fit defense into their core builds if they need it. So essentially, you know, the IE change is what most of the stuff is centering around. They removed the doubling of the current crit that you already have. They removed the true damage from IE. So now it gives you a 25% flat crit and increases your crit damage by 25%. So IE can be a first rush item. Storm Razor essentially got changed so that it's more supposed to be like a third or even a fourth item, where it doesn't have the guaranteed crit on it anymore. It actually is like a stacking thing, like a shiv or you know, a rapid fire or whatever, and it slows people over 40%, decaying over 1 second, and it also makes all your other energized things 30% more effective. So that would be fleet footwork, that would be your shiv, that would be all those. So those are pretty big. And then the other thing that really stands out to me is PD is now a shield, and this is the one that I think we may see across like jungle even and stuff as well. Like when I think of Graves. So instead of it just being the enemy that you're hitting deals 20% or 12% less damage to you, this is when you get below 30% HP, an attack that would take you below that, you get a shield that is between 240 and 600. Starts scaling at level 9, and it's shield for 2 seconds. So that seems like pretty crazy to me. I'm thinking immediately like, oh my god, Graves with Warrior PD or whatever, and champions like that.
Yeah, one thing worth noting too with the effect is it does have the keyword lifeline, which is the same one that Hexdrinker and Sterix use. So you won't actually be able to stack it with either of those. But I do think it's a pretty cool change for sure. It looks like, looking at the items, like obviously I haven't played any games on this patch yet, so I could be totally wrong. But the biggest thing that stood out to me was the Storm Razor change. I actually tweeted about it because, like, to me it just looks like a hard nerf across the board. Like, so I don't know what one item spike 80 carries are going to look like, but
probably IE. It's probably going to be IE Rush again, or maybe Essence Reaver or Bork. Those 3 items.
Right, but I still think those are probably going to be weaker than the previous iteration of Storm Razor because going from the previous patch, most crit users would go Storm Razor and then Rapid Fire Cannon, and both of those are like pretty good spikes, even though like a lot of the time they're behind, and it feels super bad playing like, you know, Caitlyn or Tristana and getting those items when you're up against like a 3-item mage or something like that. But I don't know, the Storm Razor, like, it went up in cost, it went down in AD and attack speed, it lost the auto crit, which was a pretty big part of it. But I mean, I don't know how useful this energized effect is going to be on the item. Like, obviously it works with static shiv and rapid fire, increasing your range by even more. So
and probably fleet as well, so you could get a really big heal.
Definitely, but I don't know. That's the one that stuck out the most to me. It just seemed kind of weak for sure.
I mean, they even give some suggested build style thing. I mean, I think, like, you know, most people are assuming that people are going to go back to IE Rush, but we could also be back in the days where it was like people would just go BF and then there's the item and then complete IE. I think that's totally reasonable as well. So, but definitely Storm Razor is going to be garbage as a first item. So you definitely do not want to get that. And I think, as you say, it's mostly going to be up to like how useful is like the added empowerment of your energized items, right? Because if you are a fleet footwork plus rapid fire style like marksman, you know, in my head I'm thinking, okay, you're like a Caitlyn with 4 items, and you have the Storm Razor as your 4th item. All of a sudden, your rapid fire headshot or whatever is going to slow them. and deal a bunch of extra damage. And if it increases the speed up of your fleet footwork and all that stuff, then maybe it becomes effective as like part of a 6-item build. But I definitely hear you. Like the standalone item sounds garbage.
Yeah, the thing that I would say too is it's not, does this item have any use ever? But I'm comparing it to what you could get instead. Because if I'm an AD carry with, let's say IE, rapid fire, static, then the items that Storm Raider's competing with is like, do I want a Bloodthirster, a
Do you want your
GA, a
Last
Lord
Whisperer?
Dom?
Do you need a Maw? Yeah.
So to me, I don't know. It seems worse, but
They did
be wrong.
recently buff the lifesteal rune in precision to give a lot more lifesteal. So I can definitely see people foregoing their lifesteal item and just taking that.
Yeah.
Because it scales really well now.
But it takes a long time to stack.
It does, but like these are aimed at being more like late game AD carries. If I'm going early game and you're like talking about your 1-2 item power spikes, I'm going Lucian every time. I'm Lucian Bork. Like there's zero question for me there. I do like this Spear of Shojin item.
That's definitely an interesting
Even
one.
though I'm gonna be a very poor jungler nowadays with my little brown bag boots and my warrior, and then the game's probably over.
This is like a jungle pity party over here.
That was a joke. But the Spear of Shojin sounds cool because it feels like the special like aspect on it. The
It's Essence Reaver Gold passive.
awakened dragon, is going to be the Essence Reaver just transferred over to an item that gives bruiser stats, attack damage and health. It's good on like almost any AD jungler. So I feel like I do see a world where I can get this item. Like I can go warrior into Spear of Shojin, and then I have a cool interaction with my ultimate too, depending on which champion I want to like get the most out of that for. So that actually did kind of.
It is.
Yeah, well, touching on Spear of Shojin, the thing that stands out to me is that it's going to be competing pretty much directly with Black Cleaver for the item slot.
Yeah, that's true.
And one thing that if I'm a jungler trying to build Spear of Shojin, I have to be really, really rich to get this item because the components are actually a big part of what I look at when I'm building an item. And something that's super nice about Cleaver is that you can just go like warrior, and then every single time you
grab
go
a health crystal.
Yeah, you can get 2 ruby crystals. You can get a phage and another ruby crystal. Like it has a very smooth path. Like if you're building Spear of Shojin, it's like, okay, I got my warrior. Now I'm gonna back for a BF sword.
Well, I got 3 kills. That's why I'm going.
I mean,
that's why I'm going Spear.
You can get it, but I don't know. To me, this item, I feel like it's gonna be out of reach for most junglers because, if you can get the Kindle Gem, right? But then what's your next 2600 gold gonna look
back
like?
to pity party over here. Now I'm sad. My dreams are dead.
Top laners, I actually think that like I heard initially I'd seen a number of people on like Twitter and so on and so forth kind of complaining about this new item, being like, oh, they should have just taken it out. Like Jackson Riven, all these champions are gonna be so OP with it, but it costs like significantly more. So old Essence Reaver was 3K, I believe, for a completion. This is 3,400. It also has 15 less AD than old Essence Reaver had. Yes, it has the CDR and the passive is very nice, but like it costs 400 more gold. Like that is really significant. So I do think people will buy it sometimes, but we saw like now there was a ton of high elo like Rivens and Jaxes and Renekton's that were actually rushing Essence Reaver, or maybe going Tiamat into Essence Reaver and things like that, because if you use that item really well, it was super OP. But like rushing a 3,400 gold item is pretty expensive for a lot less AD. So I'll be interested to see like where it does actually slot in. But I do think that PD is the most like interesting change for me, just because this for once feels like when I'm playing marksman, I don't have to like fully sacrifice all my damage to build a defensive item, because it felt so bad. It's like, okay, you're playing a Rengar and I'm my Caitlyn bot lane or whatever, and you're popping off, right? And it's like in the past, what was I ever supposed to build besides maybe like tabbies or something like that to not just completely ruin my damage? You know what I mean? If there's like a Scion top and a Rengar, you're like, okay, well, I don't want to get one shot, but I need my like rapid fire, i.e. Last Whisper or whatever, to have a chance of killing this guy. So I do think it's kind of interesting to be able to actually, you gimp your damage a little bit, but you grab a PD, and that gives you some hope of maybe not just getting one shot by a Fed Assassin, by the Zed or the Talon or the Rengar or whatever. So I do think that's something we may see a lot more of. just with that shield. And that I think is something that a lot of marksman players will really feel good about. If it's too strong, remains to be seen, because something that fits easily into your build path and just is a generic 240 shield when you first complete it sounds really strong to me.
Yeah, I actually really like that. It kind of reminds me of the same trade-off you would make from going from Ludens to Seraphs, where it still feels like pretty much what you need that slot to
Mhm.
do, but you lose the range from rapid fire in exchange for a defensive shield. And I think Ludens to Seraphs is a really good comparison
Yeah.
because you can get the shield from Seraphs, but you lose the added wave clear of Ludens. So it seems like a good change to me. As far as like how balanced it is, like number wise, haven't really seen it yet,
Yeah, we have to
but
see.
it looks really strong. The lower price point's really nice for them too.
It's just nice though, because you couldn't ever realistically go like Maw second or something like that,
You would
or
do no
like
damage.
exactly you do nothing, or what are you gonna do? You're gonna like buy like a Sterix on Caitlyn. If that's not gonna work, okay, you're gonna go like a fucking GA second, then you're gonna do no damage, right? So this is kind of pretty nice, I think, for them. We do have some Twitter questions. Some people.
Hold on.
Nope.
The most important change of this patch.
Okay.
You haven't talked about the gold bounty change here.
That's the most important change, not all the marksman stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
So this system pissed me off before because it took a very simple system and they made it very complicated. And it seemed like it was not following rules that made sense, where people would end up with bounties where they had even CS and were O2 and stuff like that,
Mhm.
right? And we even have people taking screenshots from professional games where stuff is happening, and the calculations were all time based.
Yeah.
Here they've made a change where dying while behind in farm delays how quickly you can accrue the bounty due to minion and monster gold, which is very big for me because before you have to take into another level of possibilities here when you're ganking for top lane, especially where, previously if someone is already getting bullet in lane, right? Then there is a big wave that's built up. I almost always want to kill this person when a big wave is crashing, right? You want to dive them, they're going to lose out so much because they're also going to lose out on a lot of these minions. Previously, if you successfully killed that person, and they were really far behind in farm, when they got back, they died, they had to use their teleport, they had to probably use their flash there as well. Then they farm up as much of the big wave that's at their turret as they can. They would get a bounty because they got a whole bunch of minions in a very short amount of time, and a lot of it was time gated. So I really, really like this change where they're trying to iron out some of those oddities with the system that they put in place, because it was definitely not perfect.
I think it is definitely a good change. I personally don't think it has a huge impact on like how most games go, because in that scenario, for example, it would probably have to be that plus the top laner TP's bot to like fight there, because it has to be like you still have to go like plus 40 or whatever CS in a time window. So like it's probably not big enough for just farming that one wave.
It seems ridiculous to me.
I totally agree. It was one of the most
bounty in that situation.
It was one of the most frustrating situations because it felt super random. It's like, especially if you're in a counter matchup, I've had that where it's like you're playing a tank and you're getting slammed by a Jace and you get ganked and you die, and then the Jace goes and roams and he comes back to lane and I have like a 450 gold bounty on me and I'm 0-1 and I'm down farm and I'm like down 2 levels. I'm like,
see, like balance and everything, that is
a
one
great
thing,
feels change.
but fixing changes like this that just do not make sense, I think is really good.
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed about bounties is, what was the time thing you were talking about? Because I wasn't familiar with that rule.
The farm rule. So it's essentially like the way that you got farm bounties is if you farmed a certain amount more than like the game average or the opposing team average within a time window. So like how this often happened in those weird scenarios is I get slammed top lane, I TP back to lane, everyone's fighting bot, so they're not farming. And then during this like 2-minute window or whatever the time limit was, I went like plus 40 CS on what the game average was because they were at Dragon or I was doing my other thing. That's how you got the farm bounties most of the time. It wasn't actually being I'm 40 CS over my lane opponent. So that's how it sometimes was pretty weird, where it's like in pro play, you saw it where mid lane doesn't have TP, the other guy TP's bot, he's farming mid, he gets a farm bounty.
Yeah, I've seen that for sure. I guess, I don't know, I haven't had as much issue with bounties as I guess the community has in general, because like my understanding of it is the only way you get a bounty is if you have like a lot more gold than the average of the enemy team, right?
Yeah.
And so doesn't that kind of make sense that if the enemy team kills you, they should get a bigger reward because you had more money to work with?
Yeah.
That's kind of how I see it.
In
But
general,
I
it does.
guess they
It was
just cleaned it
just
up
this
a bit.
one unique scenario where it's
Right.
like your
Yeah.
team can actually be losing. You can be down on levels, and you have a bounty because your laner roamed while you were farming because you already died and you didn't have your team.
And like you said,
that makes sense.
it didn't even happen very much.
But it felt
was
so bad.
extremely rare. It doesn't affect the game that much. It's just really weird and like doesn't make
Yeah.
sense at all. So should be fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yep.
I think
So,
I think I could definitely use some cleaning up on
Definitely,
the system.
yeah.
But in general, I think I like it more than a lot of people do because
And also,
I'm always broke in these games.
you want those
So-
1K bounties?
I do.
a point that like Freak keeps on highlighting, the bounties didn't get increased like dramatically, right? They got increased a little bit and incrementally the higher the bounty is,
Mhm.
right? So like the first couple ones aren't that much different than they were before. One of the biggest impacts you're talking about community reaction is that they're plastered on the scoreboard now so people can see them. Like some people didn't really even know that they were happening or know that it was that big of a
Yeah.
shutdown or something.
I think a lot of people
But it
also didn't
shows-
realize that
It shows
the kill
total
is
gold.
based, yeah.
And taking into account the kill gold itself as well as the bounty. So
'Cause-
that's why people are overreacting.
Yeah, I completely agree. Though on the previous system, it was possible that if you were on a losing team but you went on a kill streak, you would still be worth a ton of gold when you die, right? With the old bounty system.
Mhm.
Now I do like how they have the system in place where if your team's losing, you won't
You're
have as
trying to
much of a bounty.
1v9.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I
So-
think that's good.
I like
All right.
it.
Still working on it.
Twitter questions. We got some Twitter questions here from your adoring fans, and maybe they also like us too. So one of the questions is, what do you think the impact of the new ADC items will have on junglers? Will there be more priority play on bot lane? Is it negligible? Like, do you have to slow down the ADCs now? Is there anything like that? So are you going to be building these? Do you have to care more about what ADs are doing, you think?
I can only make a prediction because
Yeah.
it's
You
I
haven't played
I
with
haven't
it.
played too much.
This is
but
patch day.
from what I've seen in my experience, when the crit AD carries are good, like the long range marksman, Caitlyn, Kog'Maw, Tristana, they almost always go hand in hand with enchanter supports, which are your Jannas, your Lulus,
And
that
tank
kind of thing.
junglers.
Right, and it's not necessarily that you play a tank because they're better than the other junglers, but it's that if say I'm playing Camille and I'm against a Caitlyn who has a Lulu protecting her, I will never be able to kill her in a team fight.
Mhm.
There's too much shielding, there's too much protection for the AD carry, and so I'm basically just cannon fodder for their AD carry. I'll die in 3 hits. So it kind of makes me think we'll go more toward like the season 7 Ardent Sensor sort of play style, where with junglers losing access to like getting more XP, their ability to get ahead that way, I think that jungle will become more of a supportive role, something that can spike on mid game, get a nice vow for your AD carry. And I don't exactly know the numbers and how strong these kind of characters are going to be, but I think with what they're trying to do, it'll lead to a lot more of that thing, like the Iverns, the Nunu, Sejuani kind of thing, and then you'll have your hyper carries with your crit items.
Yeah, I completely agree. And because also, not only are junglers going to have less experience overall because the jungle changes, but because there are also more neutral objectives and the neutral objectives are respawning faster, it really emphasized that type of game where it is a 5-on-5 fight, where you've got your DPS in the back line with your support peeling for them and stuff, and you have tanks in the front line. Whereas the counter used to be, you also have to worry about split pushing. Split pushing seems to have lost a decent amount of power because of the importance of, the dragons and Baron and forcing
And how
5-on-5s
much
like that.
engage there has been in the game. It's so hard to pull off split push when there's like Scion and Ornn and
Yeah,
Camille
so-
Galio and all this stuff.
And we haven't really seen like fully committed poke comps and like,
C9.
That actually reminded me of
I mean, as an element, but it's
Yeah.
not like the siege ones that we used to have.
Something I want to touch on real quick, mentioning the split push thing, is I actually think that a change they made in the preseason that it hasn't been highlighted a lot, but there were significant changes to how side lane minions act. Where before macro was always like understanding how your side lanes were pushing, whether
Mhm.
you know there'd be like a big wave building toward you, so you could like group and let that wave stack. And I don't know exactly how they did it, but minion waves will never push on the side lanes anymore. It takes a really long time. They'll almost always just meet and stay in that spot forever.
It's the team that's winning. Essentially, your minions start moving faster, so it does change where the breakpoints are as far as like how they will bounce back or how it will put
Yeah,
you.
but
But your team has to have like an overall level
Yeah.
lead.
If you're not overall ahead, it should work similarly to before. But I know there
it
are
doesn't though. Like in all my experience, minion waves will just sit there on the side wave for like 5+ minutes, not pushing. So it actually like comps that do 1-3-1, that kind of thing, like with soul laners that can continue split, are at a pretty big advantage because the fact that like you have to go to your sideways if you want to get farm. Like you can't really just pull in
Mhm.
slow push waves anymore in the game. I don't know if it's an intended change, but that's how they've been working. And so I think it's one of like the biggest changes to macro that I've seen in like the past few years is that like small change that's actually like had a pretty big impact on how the game's played.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I also think it's something that like it's just not fully understood yet because everyone has had it so worked out in your head how waves behave in the past. So everyone I think has to relearn it, and also because it's dynamic based on level leads and all this stuff. It'll take a long time, I think, for everyone to understand, okay, we're 2 levels up on average than them. This is how the minion waves behave now. And that's something probably that coaches and
2
analysts
levels on average is
Okay,
also
whatever.
insane.
I'm just
for a
I'm just
whole
giving a random example,
team.
but
Yeah.
you know that's something that coaches and analysts and stuff would probably have to really figure out and start to teach teams. And probably the first person to do it will give their team probably a significant advantage, I would think. We do have one more question here.
We have 2 more questions.
We're gonna go with one more question here. You want to go? You want to hit both? The other one.
Well,
the other one was one that we
Luke,
basically touched
we
on the
already
whole
we
time.
already answered Lucas Boyer basically because we talked
That's
about.
why I was going to one more question, Kobe.
I'm just saying we got 3.
All right, we got one more question here from Kevin at FazeCast. He says, "What do you think about Riot forking the game at certain major milestones like preseason, midseason, etc.? Kind of just the idea of creating these big changes at certain points throughout the year."
Personally, I don't think that could ever work. Hasn't worked for crypto, any of those forking for any of the coins that yeah, you guys are both blank stares on crypto. Okay, never mind.
Oh, we're talking about Elite.
Azael
Yeah.
never got into it. But like I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, you're just gonna split the player base if you fork the game and you have different versions.
Oh, is that what it is? I think they mean just like going a different. I
think
interpreted
he-
the question as like making big changes, going different ways, kind of thing. But maybe I'm
You fork it at different milestones, like preseason.
yeah, like
Well,
preseason and midseason and stuff. It's
I
how I'm interpreting.
I understood it
people
as like
like-
breaking up the game, like because they're in the ranked season. There's the splits.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah, and then he says, and it could let you play your favorite version of the game. So then if there's
Oh.
2 versions and I want to play old season and you play new season,
Oh, so he does mean
then-
splitting the player base.
then
I
you're just
misunderstood.
splitting-
I don't like
Yeah.
that at all.
No, I
I
wouldn't
think
like that
anything
either.
that splits a player base is not good for the game. I love it when there's like the most players you can have that are having the same experience.
Yeah, it hurts Q
So
times
what
so
did you
much.
think forking was?
Oh, I thought he literally meant since he was talking about preseasons, literally just like creating big changes at that point. Like, but I misunderstood.
Oh.
See, that's why you guys also don't get the crypto thing. You need
Yeah.
Dude, you'd have people that are like, I want to go back to like
Yeah,
season
exactly.
4, like no one could beat me in season
Yeah.
4, and everyone else is
There's-
just like,
He's the only player playing.
that
it.
was 5 years ago, dude. Who are you competing against?
I also just think that in general, with like people remember a lot of stuff through kind of like the rose tinted glasses, right? Same thing happened. I mean, this guy references Vanilla WoW and whatever. A lot of people, I think, forget about issues they had with the game at different times, and they just remember like what was most fun for them at that time. They're like, oh, I loved when Gragas, AP Gragas was so fun or whatever, right? They have their favorite thing, and they forget about all the another annoying things that happen at the same time, because that's true of every game. There's always frustrations, there's always some sort of imbalances, no P stuff.
Yeah, but yeah, you can't really do that where you would split the player base in half.
Nah, I don't think that'd be good.
Yeah, definitely agree. All right, well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of The Dive. I'd like to give a shout out to Alienware for our beautiful new laptops. If you guys noticed, no Riot Fist. These are looking very, very nice. So thank you to them. They're also doing all the computers on the LCS stage. I want to thank you, Meteos, for coming in and hanging out with us, dropping some jungle knowledge on us. And
Thank you for having me.
hopefully we will see you on the LCS stage sometime soon. I wish you all the best of luck in your games. Remember, LCS is going to be starting at 2 p.m. PST this Saturday. And then we also are going to have games on Sunday, of course. Keep tweeting us your questions. Hashtag the Dive LOL. You can tweet at Riot Kobe, at Riot Azael. Let us know what you want to find out. Also, suggestions for guests. If you would like anyone to come in, hit us up.
You can apply. The process is rigorous. Meteos went through a complete screening. He can contest. And he was actually the only one approved so far.
Yep.
So
maybe we'll have Meteos
keep the
every
list
week.
open.